Welcome one and all to the Dragonstone Tavern. Hope you all are thirsty, so pull up a chair and grab a table. Grab some ale, have about a turkey leg. It's all here. You're all welcome in my humble abode. Well, one of my humble abodes anyway. So, what is this place all about? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is a place where we can talk, be merry, drink, have fun, and just tell stories about our lives. So, what's on today's agenda, you may ask? Well, that's pretty simple. We're here to talk about FanFest. That's right, FanFest in Anaheim 2026. Now, FanFest is of course 2 weeks out, and this video is probably too old by now, but screw it, I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. So, why do I want to talk about FanFest? Well, everyone's already talking about FanFest. But this is going to give you probably a perspective of someone who's not quite as big or quite as popular in people's eyes as a Xenosis or a Mr. Happy. So I'm going to give you a perspective of a simple Joe Schmo. So first, I want to talk about the venue. This year's FanFest was held in Anaheim, California, whereas in previous years it's been held in Las Vegas. It was held in Las Vegas in 2023. That's where I went to my first ever Final Fantasy FanFest. That's right, I went during the worst time of the year in August, and the heat was unbearable. Everyone hated the heat. Yoshi P hated the heat. Everyone hated the heat. And so I do not blame them for moving it to Anaheim, California for 2026 and doing it much earlier in the year, because as we all know, April can be a little bit wishy-washy, but for the most part it was excellent. Weather was excellent. So, as a native of California for my entire life, since the day I was born, I'm within driving distance of these past 2 Final Fantasy FanFests. I went to Vegas, and then I went and drove to Anaheim both times, so I saved on flyer mileage. And I can say that between the 2 venues, between the Las Vegas Convention Center and the Anaheim Convention Center wins out, no question. It was bigger, it was taller, it allowed for more people, and I think the flow of it was actually done a lot better than it was at Las Vegas. So in terms of venue and in terms of the people that were hired to run it, I give them an A. Las Vegas was known for being a little bit of a bad reputation for the people who were putting it on, the staff that run it, and to accommodate the disabled and ADA people that needed it. They did a pretty poor job. It was poorly managed, and I'm glad to see that from my perspective, it was picked up dramatically. You had people helping them every step of the way, from events to seating. Seating was done a lot better. The area was done a lot better. The staff was a lot nicer, so I give them props for that. So let's talk about the venue for a second. In Las Vegas, to compare, the seating was done with one big venue room, and you had the seating, and then you had the background, which would house the events, such as the stuff you can interact with, take pictures with, physically do, etc., etc. The Anaheim Convention Center, we had 2 big rooms. We had one just for the keynotes and all the talking and the concert, the seating, everything. It was huge. They had like double the capacity. You could move far back. They had more screens. And then you had another big room off to the side, equally large space where you had all the events. So you could fit pretty much double the amount of people. And I think, from what I could see, they had probably about a 50% increase than the Vegas one. So yeah, there was a lot more people in that one. When we talked about the design of space allowed for the events, I think this one allowed for more room to walk around with. You're less clustered, unless you were actually sitting in the front row and you were pretty much the last to leave. I experienced that firsthand when I exited the first night. Was pretty much in the back because I got a good seat, so leaving was a bit hectic. But I would say that this was definitely a better venue space than the Las Vegas Convention Center. And I know this place housed BlizzCon at one point. I've never been to any of the conventions in this particular venue, so I can't really compare other than these two events that I went to, so take what you will, take it with a grain of salt. But I will say that this one was probably located better than Las Vegas as well, because this place is in Disneyland's backyard. It's on Platella, it's on Harbor, it's on one of the main drags of LA, and you are surrounded by hotels, food places, pretty much everything within walking distance. And in Las Vegas, where you were pretty isolated. So unless you took a tram, unless you had a taxi, Uber, a place, method of transportation, you were basically stuck there. So it was nice to have this place be, outside, walking distance, weather was nice. So this place clearly took the win here. Now let's talk about gift bags, because I know some of you went to the FanFest to get your hands on the gift bag. I know, I see you. You went there just for the gift bag. Well, let me tell you, we're on a bad trend. That's right, we're on a bad trend because the bags are getting smaller. Yes, that is right. You heard it here. They are getting smaller with each FanFest. You don't believe me? Well, let's take a look at my room and I'll show you it. So here we are in my room. I know it's nothing fancy, but what can you do? So, the 2019 FanFest gift bag was a pretty substantial backpack. It was probably like full size. I saw some people there that carried it, and it was pretty good size. The one that we got in Vegas, medium, not bad. It's got some good space. You can carry a water bottle. You can carry books. You can carry your phone. Pretty much anything, really. I mean, it's pretty good size without being too overbearing. Good material. You can carry some stuff. The one that we got this year. Ooh, boy. Yep. I'm not lying. This is about half the size. We got about half the size of the Las Vegas backpack. This one is substantially smaller. You can't really even fit a water bottle in, and I would say that it's unique. It's unique, but I think we got more in it than last time. We got a hat. We got a hat this time. I don't really want to put it on, mess up my hair, but it's a cool hat. Has a logo on it. And we got our sticker book. This year was all about stickers. It's all about collecting stickers and trading stickers with other fans. You got some other people's Warrior of Light. You've got Y'shtola, you've got Thancred, you've got Urianger. And then we've got Astinian. And then we got Tataru. Got Y'shtola and her Water. If you know, You know the reference I'm referring to. This was a cool idea. I mean, it really brought people together. You know, you've got Rahatia here, you've got Cryo, you've got Horsefant and his Hot Cocoa. People really made some really good stickers. They made some really good stickers that they brought with them. I was impressed. We've got one where they did a collab with Jollibee, you know, the chicken place, Jollibee. We had a Jollibee Lovely there. So the gift bag was nice. It could have been bigger, but for what you get, it's still a really nice, momentous bag. So I think it's on sale at the store for like $40. So so now that we discussed our gift bags, let's head back to the Dragonstone Tavern. So I bet you're wondering now, what events did they have at FanFest? Was it all fun and games? Did they have anything new? Did they repeat the same things from Las Vegas? Well, the answer to that is yes and no. They had about what you would expect from a FanFest if you've ever been to one, with throwing new things in there from the current expansion, and then their talking points was more or less the same. You know, you had the keynote, which everybody waits for. It's the first thing that they do, addressing the new expansion Evercold. And then they have their cosplay walk, they have their meet and greets, they have their Q&A with Yoshi P, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I want to talk about the events, because the events here differed, of course, from the one in Las Vegas. You know, you've got your typical lounging area. At Vegas, it was rods out hand with carpets, bed pillows you can lay on the ground. Nice and cozy. This one, their lounge space was Solution 9. And I think Solution 9 was far better than rods at hand. They had couches, which were taken up by Magic the Gathering players, so nobody could sit there. But you also had other tables with some single seat lounges, and you had a really good view of 3 huge screens and a bunch of other seating areas. So you could always catch up on what they were talking about in the main room. They had events that didn't have anything to do with Final Fantasy XIV. You know, you had a punch machine, you know, the ones where you punch the bag and you get a score. And it was called Medium's One Punch Mayhem or something like that. So that was fun. Then they had, you know, a typical basketball shooting game that you see in many arcades. That one I actually did pretty well on. You know, everyone else was just maybe one shot in 30 seconds. You had a basic racing game. If you've ever been to Circus, you've seen one of the games where you have animals lined up vertically and they race horizontally in front of you while you throw a ball. You roll a ball into several holes and one hole makes it go further while the other one just barely moves at all. They disguise it as horses, camels, birds, etc. Well, at Final Fantasy FanFest, they disguised them as alpacas, so it was called the alpaca race. And you know, had all the bells and whistles, it had the lights flickering, it had the noise. Didn't really get anything for it, but you know, it was a nice thing. The other events that you had there basically gave you stickers. And it's a common thing that if you incentivize a person, if you give a person a carrot on a stick as an incentive, they're going to show up. And something as simple as a sticker is something everybody is going to show up for, no matter what. No matter how ridiculous it is or how long it's going to take. Some of it was divided between photographs, and some of it was divided between actual physical events that you could actually do. So let's talk about the pictures first. You had an array of stands and various objects you could take pictures with for days. Believe me, I know, I took some. One of the most key places to take a picture with was Tito's Tacos, the Solution 9 drinking vendors where, you know, the Brute Bomber got his fits in. You had Raja Tia on the gondola boat, the red gondola boat in the last area where he talks to you and stuff. Unfortunately, it was a cardboard cutout and a very not well done one at that. But the line for it was ridiculously long, like 3 hours long, and I did not want to wait. Luckily, they had the staff just handing out tickets for people who did not want to wait because the line was just absolutely ridiculous. We had another one with Honeybee Lovely, and this one was actually with a real person dressed in a costume. And for the most part, it worked. She took a couple breaks every now and then, but for the most part, you could take a picture with her, or if not, you had the wings and the tail you can take a picture with and get your sticker. And this line was pretty good, not as long as the Grahatia one, but you could tell that the person probably got irritated at times and had to take more breaks, especially on day 2. I don't know if they switched people in costume to help with that or not. I couldn't really tell. You had a crystalline conflict where people would team up in teams of 5, and each person got a chance to roll a dice, which was only like half blue, half red. If both dice came up red, it moved one direction. If it turned out blue, it moved the other direction. If you got red and blue, it wouldn't move at all. So naturally, the crystal would never move from the middle. It would always move one spot towards blue, maybe 2 spots, but then it would go back to the middle, and a lot of times it wouldn't move at all, so it never really reached the end goal. So we had to do a sudden death. Whoever basically moves it once wins, and we won. Yeah, that's right, we won. So outside of that, you know, you had other places where you could take pictures and you could see fan art of people who submitted their art, probably online or physical, like physical copies of it. But the highlight of it all, Dancing Green. Ride the rhythm. Yep. In Las Vegas, they had a Loperet dance area where you could dance, and that was actually pretty popular, you know. It wasn't for anything. People could just go up there and dance, take pictures, whatever. This time, they really went all in on it. They had a big statue of Dancing Green. They had a screen with the boss fight, M5, Dancing Green. They had the music, and they had a giant disco floor that actually telegraphed the attacks, like checkerboard style, stacking where everyone would have to stack in, and then the taint spotlights. They had 2 taint spotlights where people could go in and you would be focused on the video behind you, and everyone was just clapping, cheering them on, embarrassing themselves, and just dancing their ass off. And they had 4 separate spotlights in the corners where each person could go in and have fun, have their turn, in case you didn't get the taint spotlights. I got one of the corner spotlights, and let me tell you, I'm an introvert, so I don't really do any of this. I didn't care. I didn't give a flying F. I went in there, had fun, did whatever. You had people in wheelchairs just dancing their asses off too. You had toddlers. It was so much fun. It was definitely the highlight of the events at this FanFest, and you could tell because a lot of people lined up. Many people were waiting to were willing to wait like 3 hours for it. I waited like 2.5 hours because even though you had like 16 people go at a time, it took like 5 minutes of setup. Well, like 2 minutes of setup and then like 3 minutes of doing the dance or whatever, and then leaving and going forth. I did that on the first day, and let me tell you, it wore me out. I was definitely worn out after that, but it was so much fun. Between the two FanFests, it was clearly the best thing out of all of them. So you're probably wondering about food and drink. Well, the food and drink isn't really all that different than other conventions you've probably gone to. Maybe you've gone to the Las Vegas one. I would say it's very, very similar food-wise to that. Prices haven't really changed. They're still really expensive. You're probably paying like $5 for a coffee and like $15 to $20 for a burrito or a hamburger. But the food is really tasty. I mean, I was not disappointed in any of the food I've gotten over there. I've gotten a burrito, I've gotten a hamburger. They've all been really good. They have food trucks outside, and luckily this time, you don't have to stand in the heat to get your food this time. So that was really nice. In terms of coffee, you've got your standard coffee houses. Las Vegas had Starbucks. This one had a local coffee house. You even had other coffee places within walking distance if you wanted to go there. So food was a 2-bit thumbs up. It's gonna be pricey, but there you go. Events, keynotes, all of that involved. What was probably the best thing? Well, the best was probably the keynote at the beginning. Everyone always lines up for the keynote. It's going to reveal so much information about the Nets expansion. And North America FanFest is usually the first one out of the three. You've got North America, you've got Europe, and then you've got Japan. North America is usually the first one, and it's usually regarded as the least exciting one, I would say, because you're given the information first, but you're not really given too much information. You're usually given strats because they won't go into detail. They'll save the details for later FanFests. So it kind of depends on which you value more. Do you value getting the information first, or are you into the nitty-gritty of everything? So this year we got a lot of information. I mean, the trailer shit on Don Trail's trailer by a large margin, and we got so many things revealed. But of course, a lot of the stuff, when going into detail, is saved for Berlin. Everyone groaned because by the time that finished, people were groaning that it was always saved for Berlin or other Japanese FanFests. What can you do, It comes with the territory. And then we, of course, were going to be given 2 new classes, physical ranged and a tank. And of course, those won't be revealed until Berlin. But we also got news on the evolved combat system. Yeah, they're changing things around. I think we'll go into that in another separate video, so you can just wait on my thoughts on that. I know everyone's already thrown theirs out there, but I think theirs is a little biased, if I'm not being too brash there. But from the other events, you've got your cosplay walk, but this cosplay felt really, really rushed in comparison to Vegas's cosplay. The Vegas cosplay lasted about an hour or so. This one, I would say, lasted probably about half an hour, half that time. From what I heard, people were being rushed. They were being like, get out there, walk, and get the F out. But then some people took their time. You had a toddler out there and their family. they took a while. You had groups of 3 or 4 that took up about 30 seconds, 30, 40 seconds versus just 10 seconds or maybe even 5 seconds that other people would take. It was like barely enough that the camera itself could barely follow them. They were following them, and then they got to the end and they had to rush to get the new person. It was hectic. I do not know why they rushed them. Maybe they thought the keynote ran longer or they needed more time, but there was just not enough people, or they just rushed through and they got nervous. Who knows? Probably the highlight of it was the tank that came out with the yarn that came out behind him, snuck up, gave him the finger poke of doom, and the tank just fell flat, dead. If you don't know, it's a reference to M6S. It was a hectic ad phase that was added, and you had all these barnyard animals. You know, you had yarns that just destroyed the tank. So that was fun to see. And then you've got your typical your Stolas, you've got your Vanfatels. You had a lot of dancing greens from what I could tell. And then you've got your typical warrior of light, mostly paladins, your dancers that are sexy dancers. It's such good fun. It's such good fun. If I had the ability to do cosplay, I would definitely participate, but I'm just not one of those guys. But I do have high respect for those that take their time to make their costumes, because I know it takes a lot of effort to do that. So good on them. And then we get to a Q&A with Yoshi P on day 2. The Q&A was really funny. I mean, you had Yoshi P kicking and rolling an inflatable dice cube to answer questions because they were divided into 3 groups: easy, medium, and hard questions. And he kept rolling the hard questions over and over, so much so that Yoshi P thought the dice was rigged or loaded. And that was funny to see because he had to answer questions about butt sliders. I know who you are who asked that question. Yes, butt sliders. Everybody wants to know, when are they getting butt sliders? Because for those that know, there was a whole fiasco about the 2B undies that came from the Near Alliance raid that would basically give you a better butt. And when you took them off, you were basically flat. And they tried changing it. People did an outcry, so they changed it back. So they want to know, when's butt sliders are coming? Well, Yoshi P is going to try and relay that to the team and see what they can do about that. And he, of course, answered about glamour issues and all that stuff that came about with that. He also had questions that were more closer to the heart, like what's his favorite moment? What do you think about this his like special moment with the team? What else and stuff like that. So that was nice to see. In terms of the concerts are, of course, you have night 1 with the piano concert, usually a vocalist who will sing, and then you've got night 2, which features the primals. Night 2 always kind of is the capstone of all of it. The price of attendance for FanFest is worth it alone in terms of the concert. You know, the concert alone is worth it because you've got the primals, and whether you're in front row in the mosh pit, back, or in a separate room completely watching it like I did, you're having so much fun. You are just so immersed in what people around you are doing that their fun kind of rubs off on you, and you are having fun. So it's just a complete blast to hear the primals, and even the piano concert. It's just a mellow, you're relaxed after the full day, and you are just completely listening to the vocalist. And even if you don't really like the songs that they're singing, you enjoy the experience. Unless you're the guy next to me who had his arms crossed the entire time, like he didn't want to be there sometimes. So that's all in good fun. You had the Crystalline Conflict finals, which kind of messy this time around, you know, in setting up. They took a long time setting up, but that was fun for what it, if you're interested in PvP and you know who these teams are. I unfortunately don't, and it's kind of a jumbled mess, but it's something enjoyable to watch if you're there and see in live person. So, in closing, I would say that this FanFest was a lot better than the Las Vegas FanFest in terms of venue space, in terms of events, and in terms of overall appeal. Probably the most disappointing thing about this FanFest, I would say, is the lack of a testable raid boss. In years prior, we had testable raid bosses that we could fight, you know, 8-man trials. In the Las Vegas FanFest, we had a trial against a Hildebrand boss fight. I think Ashura, I can't remember, Azura, one with like 6 swords. That was fun. This year, we had none of that. We had nothing. We couldn't test anything, and that was probably the biggest disappointment, because I know some people wanted to see if we could test out a boss fight or test out the new evolved combat system that they displayed when they went over that. You got to see Bard, you got to see Dragoon, you got to see Paladin, you got to see White Mage, but we couldn't really test any of that. Nothing was really testable for us to play, and that is the biggest possible thing that you could do at FanFest, or at least one of them, and to not be able to do any of that was really disappointing. But I get that. I know that they probably didn't have any boss fights for us to test, so it's not a big deal. We had a lot of other stuff to do, and a lot of that stuff took up a lot of time when you're waiting in line. So, you know, you take the good with the bad, and maybe next time they'll have something for us to test. But overall, I would say that outside of LA traffic, this was definitely a better location, and I hope that they choose this place and this time of year for their next FanFest, or at least think about some place that has good weather if they have to do it in the summertime, and definitely choose carefully, because Las Vegas staff wasn't all that great. I don't think it was their fault necessarily, because it's the convention center that hires these people to help with the FanFest. So hopefully that they do another one in Los Angeles or someplace else, but I don't see how they can house that many people, and usually California or a state like that is usually where they hold these big conventions like that, which makes it easy for me because I can drive there. But in closing, if you've never been to a FanFest before, I highly encourage you to go. I highly encourage you to go, because it's a memory that will last pretty much your entire life. It's something that's completely different. I think it's different than BlizzCon. I think it's different than other anime conventions that you've probably been to. It's something that you can talk about with your friends, have fun for multiple days. And even though it might be pricey if you have to stay overnight at a hotel for a couple of days, I think it's worth it. I definitely think it's worth it. So in closing, please, if you've never been to one, I would highly encourage you to go to attend at least one if you're a longtime fan of this game. So that's it. That's all I've got for you today at the Dragonstone Tavern. So if you enjoyed my tale, leave a like, leave a subscribe to me, hit me up on Twitter, X, if you want to watch me play Final Fantasy or other games like Witcher 3, Baldur's Gate 3, Expedition 33, any game named 3. You can catch me on Twitch on Night Tavern. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later.